I'm going to read with you from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 1. We have been doing a series looking at some of the grandmothers of Jesus, women who are named or listed in his genealogy as recorded in Matthew 1. Matthew 1 begins with this. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then going down a little bit, we read that Boaz was the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. We talked about her last week. Obed, the father of Jesse, and Jesse, the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. And we will learn the story of Uriah's wife by turning to 2 Samuel chapter 11. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. And David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." So David sent this word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent him to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." So Uriah left the palace, and the gift from the king was sent after him. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all of his master's servants, and did not go down to his house. David was told, "Uriah did not go home." So he asked Uriah, "Haven't you just come from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home?" And Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How can I go to my house and eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah out on the front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so he will be struck down and die." So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah in the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger, "When you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, 'Why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know that they would shoot arrows from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbesheth? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall?' Well, if he asks you this, then say to him, 'Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite died.' The messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had said to say to him. The messenger said to David, 'The men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. Moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead.' David told the messenger, 'Say this to Joab, don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as another. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say, this is to encourage Joab.' When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. On this fourth Sunday of Advent, we come to the fourth woman who is mentioned in Jesus' genealogy. The fourth of, as we've been calling them, Jesus' grandmothers. It's interesting that of the four of them, she's the only one whose name isn't actually mentioned. It says that she was the wife of Uriah the Hittite. It doesn't actually say her name. And of the four, she is one that comes across as not being controversial in the ways that the other ones were. Remember, we learned the story of Tamar, and Tamar was a woman who was discriminated against by her own family, was not given the position and the opportunities of a widow of a son of Israel. And so she was backed into a corner and did things that were desperate. And we learned about Rahab, who was a Canaanite woman who had the occupation of prostitution, and yet she knew to throw her lot in with these new people coming in and found her own place in the people of God. And Ruth was another foreigner, a Moabite, a woman who came from a culture with a religion and a spirituality that was completely different than what Israel had. Yet she said to her mother-in-law that your way will be my way and your God will be my God, and became a respected and loved figure in biblical history. Bathsheba was an Israelite woman. She was a woman of integrity. She was married and was conducting herself in a way that shouldn't have brought controversy. We should not have had to learn the name of Bathsheba. But the story was, and we just read it, but she was in the night, in the darkest time, in the most private time, washing herself. And it says that the king couldn't sleep, so he got up and was prowling around the rooftop of the palace and looked down into the city and saw a woman in her private moment. And what does a person do when you unexpectedly see something that you should not see? If you're a person of integrity, If you have honor, you turn away and say, "Oh, I did not need to see that. I should not have seen that," and you avert your eyes. But King David was not a man to avert his eyes. He took a good, long look at this beautiful woman, and he wanted her. And he schemed to get her. He had his servants bring her to him. Now, what is a simple person, a common person, supposed to do when someone of that much power and that much privilege orders you to their house? Bathsheba would have felt that she had no choice but to go. And when the king says to a woman like that, "Get into my bed," she did not have an option. She was raped by King David. I have heard this story before. When I was a boy going to Sunday school and having a teacher recount the story, the sense that I always got was that Bathsheba was a temptress. That she was flaunting herself and managed to wiggle her way into the king's affections, and she's really the one orchestrating all of these terrible events that happened. The only problem with that understanding of the narrative of the story is that that's not what the story says. Maybe it's our patriarchal heritage that makes us want to absolve the men and castigate the women. I hope that we are moving past those kind of discriminatory attitudes. I have attended, as a pastor and as a church leader, I have attended many seminars about power and the effect of power and the responsibility of power and the abuse of power. And I have learned that when a person of power enters into an inappropriate relationship with someone, that it is always the blame of the one with the power. And the one without is, by definition, a victim of that power. And so the church that I serve and the denomination I am a part of has taken a very strong view against clergy and church leader abuse, because it is abuse. And we will not accept it, we will not tolerate it, and we will take whatever step is necessary to prevent it and to punish it. King David didn't get that. He was very willing to abuse his power. A friend of mine is a poet, and she wrote a poem actually about the women that are in this genealogy, and there's this part that she wrote about Bathsheba. And just so you know, the rest of the story is that Bathsheba became pregnant. She was pregnant, we learn that. She gave birth to a boy, and that boy died in infancy as a result of the sin of David. Another part of the tragedy of Bathsheba. This is what my friend wrote. Uriah's wife, a young woman caught by the eye of her king. How could she say no? Was there even a way for her to deny his command? Did she grow to love King David as she'd loved Uriah? her loss increased. First a dead husband, and then a dead baby son. That Uriah's name is forever linked to her in the genealogy. Again, no mistake. David was not the first to have Bathsheba's heart or her body. God's plan included a soldier who died for his king, so that a king might be born who would die for us all. That was written by Jen Vanderbeek. In this story of the ancestor of Jesus, this grandmother of Jesus, it's very clear who the victim is. The victim in the story is Bathsheba herself, taken advantage of, used, bereft. She lost the husband. There is nothing in the story that says she did not love her husband Uriah. She lost him. She lose self-respect. She was a victim. There is a hero in this story, and the hero is Uriah. Uriah the soldier, Uriah the husband, the one who took his duty so seriously that when the opportunity to enjoy the marriage with his wife, he said, I am going to set that aside, the physical part of that, so that I can be with my men and so that I can serve my king. And for his integrity, he was killed. He died because he would not sink to the level of the king. Which leads us to see who in this story is the villain. And the villain is King David. The chapter began, I don't know if you noticed that little detail, that this happened at the time when the kings went to war. And the whole army of Israel was out in the field fighting. Where did the king belong? The king belonged at the head of the army. The king belonged directing the men so that they could accomplish their goals. He did not belong in his palace. And in the night, he did not belong skulking around in the shadows, peering into other people's private places. He did not belong in a bedroom with another man's wife. He did not belong there. It was wrong. It was evil. And it is significant that this whole tawdry tale of love and lust and jealousy and sacrifice and murder would be part of the story of Jesus Christ. That Jesus came to this earth with that as part of his family's story. What does that mean? Why is that important? Why is it important that Jesus has this as part of his heritage? Well, it means, for one thing, that we who are experiencing that kind of betrayal, or that kind of hurt, that kind of deception, are understood by the Lord. That he gets it. He understands what happens. He knows the darkness that is in the hearts of people. and he does not turn away from us because of it. Indeed, it is for that he came, so that he could bring healing even to this most intimate and most private and most personal area of our lives, and say, I will redeem this too. It's important that this is part of Jesus' story because it shows us that he too stands with the victims. Poor Bathsheba. Bereft, abused, hurt, shamed. Say, am I too broken? Am I too damaged by all these terrible things for God to love me, for there to be hope for me? And the answer is, he stands with you. Indeed, Jesus in his own way was abused, was victimized. So he will not forsake those that experience that themselves. For those who are abusers, and maybe you're listening to this message and you know yourself to be one who has caused that kind of harm, has done that kind of betrayal, has that level of brokenness in your heart, and maybe you are shamed. Maybe you should be shamed. But then you also should know that Jesus is the one who can heal even those diseases, that he can reach into your heart and he can turn you around and he can help you find the forgiveness that you need and the new way of living that would bring glory to God. And that is part of the story. You see, Jesus is the great overcomer. The one who is perfectly aware of all the troubles that are in life. And he comes to set it right. Maybe that's why these stories are in the Bible. These weird, hard, painful, brutally honest stories. So that we can know that in the brutality and the brokenness and the shamefulness of our lives, that we can find hope and renewal and a future worth living. God bless Bathsheba. God bless King David. God bless the memory of Uriah the Hittite. And God bless you, whoever you are and wherever you are at. Amen.